Part 1. The Stoic Revolution begins. Why rewiring your mind matters. Every morning we wake up to noise, notifications, headlines, emails, expectations. Before our feet even touch the floor, we're already bombarded. The mind, our greatest ally, becomes hijacked by demands we didn't choose. Over time, this chaos becomes our normal. We start believing that life is supposed to be overwhelming, that stress is the price of ambition, and that peace is a luxury reserved for vacations or retirement. But what if that's a lie? What if the root of the chaos isn't the world, but the way we think? This is where Stoicism steps in, not as ancient theory, but as a powerful and practical tool for mental transformation. This is the beginning of a revolution, not outside, but inside. The ancient Stoics, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, they weren't ivory tower philosophers detached from real life. They were warriors of the mind. Epictetus was born into slavery. Marcus ruled an empire during plagues and war. Seneca navigated the treacherous politics of Nero's Rome. These men didn't write about theory. They wrote about survival, mental survival, and they discovered something timeless. Our suffering often comes not from what happens, but from how we think about what happens. Rewiring your mind isn't just about calm, it's about reclaiming control over your life. It's the discipline of mastering thought, so that thought doesn't master you. At the core of Stoicism lies one foundational insight: the dichotomy of control. Epictetus drilled it into the minds of his students. Some things are up to us, and others are not. What's up to us? Our thoughts, choices, values, and responses. What's not? Everything else, what others think, what happens in the world, whether we get the job or the praise or the apology. This is not a call to passivity. It's a call to focus. When you focus only on what is within your power, you eliminate the drain of worrying about what isn't. You direct your mental energy with precision, like a laser. You stop leaking power into things that never gave you control in the first place. Think about how this plays out in daily life. You get cut off in traffic, your heart races. You shout, you relive it in your head, hours later. Why? Because you're reacting to something you can't control. The Stoic mind would acknowledge the moment and let it go, or imagine you post something you're proud of, and no one likes it. A non-Stoic mind spirals into self-doubt. But a Stoic mind understands that external validation is not within our control. The work, the effort, the virtue, that is what matters. In business, relationships, fitness, even personal setbacks, this perspective reshapes how we move through life. It puts the power back where it belongs, with you. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most famous Stoic, wrote to himself every day in his personal journal. This wasn't for public consumption, it was self-training. Repetition, discipline, reminder. He wrote about death, about injustice, about self-control and ego and fear. In the middle of wars and political turmoil, he sat quietly and reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength isn't domination of others, it's mastery over self. His notes became meditations, one of the most powerful self-help books of all time, written not to teach others, but to reinforce his own mind. That's what rewiring is. It's daily, it's reflective, and it's non-negotiable. We live in an era obsessed with external performance. How much money do you make? How many followers do you have? What do people think of you? But the Stoics ask a different question. Are you in control of yourself? Are you acting with virtue? Are you living by reason, not emotion? These are the questions that build real strength and real peace. We admire people with mental discipline, athletes, entrepreneurs, monks, not because they were born that way, but because they trained their minds like others train their bodies. Stoicism gives us the tools to do the same. We can practice detachment, self-control, clarity, and courage daily. Let's look at a modern example: the gym. You walk in to train your body, but the first thing you encounter is resistance, discomfort, fatigue, excuses. Discipline isn't easy, but it's practiced. The more you push through, the stronger you get. Stoicism is training for the mind. You practice letting go of what you can't control. You remind yourself of your values. You reframe obstacles as opportunities. You catch yourself spiraling in emotion and bring it back to reason. This kind of mental gym builds emotional resilience, self-mastery, and clarity in every area of life. Mental health is another place where Stoicism offers real strength. Anxiety, fear, anger, they're real and human. The Stoics never denied emotion. They simply refused to be ruled by it. Seneca wrote extensively about anger and how dangerous it can be when it's left unchecked. He said that anger is a form of temporary insanity. When we let it control us, we surrender reason. But when we catch it, question it, and respond with clarity, we grow stronger. This isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about channeling it. Modern therapies like CBT take this exact approach, using reason to reframe and redirect thought patterns. The Stoics were doing this 2,000 years ago. Rewiring your mind with Stoicism doesn't happen in a day. It's not a one-time motivation video. It's a philosophy, a way of life. It's daily journaling, reflection, action, and choice. It's remembering that adversity is not the enemy, it's the forge. Marcus wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That is the essence of Stoic transformation. You stop running from difficulty and begin using it. Every challenge is now a chance to practice. Every setback, an opportunity to rise. This is where our journey begins, with clarity, with power, with ownership. You are not your thoughts, you are the thinker. You are not your emotions, you are the responder. You are not your past, you are the one writing the next chapter. And if you embrace this Stoic lens, if you commit to rewiring your mind through action, reflection, and discipline, you will find strength that no one can take away. Not the world, not failure, not fear. Only you hold the key to your inner fortress. It's time to build it. Part 2. The dichotomy of control. Your power lies within. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies one of the most liberating and transformative ideas ever conceived by the human mind, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, opens his Enchiridion with it, making it the foundation of all Stoic practice. He wrote, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." In this simple distinction is the key to mental freedom, emotional resilience, and enduring inner peace. The dichotomy of control is not an abstract theory. It is a weapon against anxiety, frustration, and despair. It is the lens through which the Stoic rewires their entire outlook on life. What is within our control? The Stoics tell us our opinions, our choices, our desires, and our aversions. In essence, our thoughts and actions. These are the realms where our will is sovereign. Everything else, our body, possessions, reputation, other people's behavior, external events, is not within our control. We may influence them, but we do not own them. When we confuse the two, we suffer. We rage against outcomes we cannot dictate. We despair over events we cannot reverse, and we chase illusions of certainty where none exists. But once we accept this truth, fully, deeply, and practically, we begin to experience an unshakable peace. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning with this perspective already hardwired into your mind. You check your phone, no messages. You feel that pang of insecurity, but it passes. You remind yourself, people's attention is not within your control. You walk outside, and it's raining, ruining your plans. No frustration, just a pivot. The weather isn't up to you, but your response is. At work, a colleague undercuts you in a meeting. You feel anger rising, but you pause. Their behavior is their own. Your reaction, that's yours to own. This isn't passivity, this is power. Because when you control your responses, you become ungovernable. The Stoics weren't unrealistic. They never claimed this mindset was easy. That's why they emphasized practice, constant, deliberate practice. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor burdened with the fate of Rome, wrote again and again about separating what he could control from what he couldn't. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he reminded himself. Seneca echoed this with clarity when he said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the internal storms we create in response. Stoicism teaches us to calm those storms, not by force but by clarity. To apply the dichotomy of control in modern life is to become mentally indestructible. Consider the gym again. You can't control how quickly your muscles grow or how your body responds to training, but you can control whether you show up, how hard you work, and how consistent you are. The results, they're not guaranteed, but your effort, that's entirely up to you. Or take business. You can't control the economy, competition, or customer decisions, but you can control your focus, your preparation, your decisions, and how you adapt. Releasing your grip on what you don't control frees up energy to master what you do. The same principle applies to relationships. You cannot control how someone feels about you. You cannot make them love you, respect you, or understand you, but you can control how you treat them. You can control whether you speak with integrity, whether you act with kindness, and whether you maintain your values regardless of their reaction. This gives you peace, because your worth no longer depends on external validation. You begin to live not to impress, but to express your inner virtues. This is the soil in which real confidence grows, not the illusion of control over others, but mastery over yourself. Even in moments of tragedy, the dichotomy of control offers a path to inner strength. Epictetus, who lived with physical disability and lifelong challenges, used to say, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." This is not cold detachment, it is a call to agency. When loss comes, grief is natural. The Stoic does not suppress pain. They feel it, honor it, and process it. But they do not drown in it, because they know what has happened is not within their control. How they carry it, that is, even in sorrow, there is a place for dignity. This mindset doesn't numb you to life, it awakens you. You stop reacting and start responding. You begin to move through the world with clarity and stability. You become like a tree rooted deep in the ground, no longer swayed by every gust of wind, other people's moods, the unpredictability of fortune, the noise of the world. None of it can shake you, because you have returned your focus to what matters most, your mind, your values, your actions, and in doing so, you've reclaimed the power that modern life so easily strips away. Today's culture sells us the opposite idea. It tells us to chase likes, outcomes, popularity, perfect bodies, and ideal timelines. It says that happiness lies in controlling everything, how we look, what people say, how life unfolds. But this chase is a trap, because it's built on trying to dominate what you never could. The Stoics, in contrast, offer a quieter revolution. Focus on what is yours and let the rest go. This creates not apathy, but precision, not detachment, but direction. Your energy becomes sacred, your focus, lethal, your peace, untouchable. Rewiring your mind with Stoicism begins by internalizing the dichotomy of control, not just as a phrase, but as a daily operating system. Every moment becomes a test. Am I focusing on what is mine? Am I reacting to what I can't change? Or am I standing firmly in my circle of influence? Over time, this rewiring shifts your baseline. You become calmer in chaos, stronger in crisis, and more anchored in self. You stop wasting mental energy on the uncontrollable, and you begin investing it where it counts, on your actions, your virtues, and your response. This isn't just philosophy. This is freedom, because when you finally let go of what you cannot control, you gain something greater, yourself. Part 3. Voluntary discomfort. Reclaiming strength through hardship. To the Stoics, comfort was a danger, not because comfort in itself is evil, but because comfort breeds complacency, and complacency is the enemy of growth. One of the most misunderstood aspects of Stoicism is its encouragement of embracing discomfort, voluntarily, deliberately, and with purpose. This is not a call for masochism or unnecessary suffering. It is a strategy, a powerful mental training regimen that prepares us to handle the inevitable hardships of life with courage, clarity, and resilience. Seneca wrote, "Set aside now and then a number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself, 'Is this the condition I feared?'" This exercise, voluntary discomfort, is one of the fastest ways to rewire the mind for strength. In a world driven by convenience and luxury, this mindset seems absurd. We are told to optimize for ease, faster service, softer beds, more comfort, less friction. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with technological progress, when we lose our ability to endure discomfort, we become fragile. The Stoic does the opposite. He trains in adversity while life is calm, so that when storms come, he does not break. He rehearses poverty, he fasts, he sleeps on the floor, not for show, but for strength. Because every time you choose discomfort, You prove to yourself that you can live without what others fear losing. Think of this like training in the gym. You don't wait until you need to lift a heavy object to start building strength. You train in advance. Voluntary discomfort is weightlifting for the soul. When you willingly walk in the cold, take the stairs fast for a day, or go without luxuries, you're conditioning your mind. You are reminding yourself that comfort is not a need, it is a luxury. And if it is taken away, you will still stand strong. This attitude is essential not only in philosophy, but in life. Business people, athletes, artists, those who endure and adapt, not those who panic and complain, are the ones who rise. In today's society, adversity often arrives unannounced. Job loss, heartbreak, illness, financial setbacks. When you've trained your mind through voluntary hardship, these events no longer paralyze you. You recognize the sensation of discomfort. You've rehearsed it, you've sat with it, and more importantly, you've already proven that you can function without pleasure, without luxury, and even without applause. The mental edge this gives you cannot be overstated. When you embrace the uncomfortable by choice, the involuntary discomfort of life loses its power over you. Let's explore a modern application. Think about fasting, not as a health trend, but as a Stoic discipline. Choosing to go without food for a period rewires your perception of hunger. You learn that hunger is not an emergency. You realize how much of your life revolves around indulgence. You take back control over your impulses. The same goes for cold showers, minimalist living, digital detoxes. Each one is a message to your brain: I can do hard things. I am not a slave to comfort. And that message echoes in everything you do, from your workouts to your work ethic, from your self-image to your stress response. This principle applies powerfully in business. Startups and entrepreneurs face rejection, loss, long hours, and little reward at first. The Stoic entrepreneur doesn't shy away from this. They know that discomfort is part of the price of greatness. They don't complain when things get hard, they expect it. They don't panic in lean months, they've practiced living lean. Their identity isn't built on things going well, but on their ability to keep going regardless. Voluntary hardship helps build a mindset where quitting isn't even considered. Because the goal is not ease. The goal is excellence. Voluntary discomfort is not about suffering, it's about sovereignty. It's the difference between choosing to carry a weight and having it thrown on you. When you carry it, you control the pace, the posture, and the mindset. When life forces it on you and you're unprepared, you collapse. But the Stoic is always training. Seneca said, "We must indulge the body only so far as is needful for good health." This wasn't Puritanism, it was clarity. The less dependent you are on external things, the more control you have over your life. When you remove excess, you uncover your essence. There's another benefit to voluntary discomfort: gratitude. When you fast and return to eating, the simplest food tastes divine. When you sleep on the floor and return to your bed, it feels like heaven. When you go without a phone for a weekend, even a simple message from a friend becomes meaningful. You learn to appreciate the ordinary. In a world obsessed with novelty, the Stoic finds joy in simplicity. This is not just spiritual, it's practical. Gratitude, born from voluntary discomfort, is a superpower. It makes you harder to offend, easier to please, and much more emotionally resilient. So how do you start? Begin small. Take a cold shower once a week. Skip a meal and reflect on the sensation. Wear the same clothes for 3 days. Leave your phone at home for a walk. Sleep without a pillow. Spend a day without speaking. Don't do these things for attention. Do them for your own inner training. Do them in silence. Observe your mind's reaction. Is it panic? Is it craving? Is it judgment? These are the attachments Stoicism helps dissolve, and each time you resist them, you become freer. You become stronger. Epictetus reminded us, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. Voluntary discomfort trains this exact mindset. Because when you can smile in the cold, laugh in hunger, and carry on when you're tired, you've conquered something most people avoid their whole lives, their own weakness. This is not martyrdom, it is mastery. It is the art of becoming anti-fragile, stronger with every challenge, calmer in every chaos, and clearer in every storm. In the end, voluntary discomfort is not about punishment, it's about preparation. The Stoics did not seek pain, but they embraced challenge. They didn't shun pleasure, but they didn't need it. And because of that, they were truly free. In a soft world, they were sharp. In a chaotic world, they were composed. In a fragile world, they were forged like steel. That is the power of choosing to suffer on your terms. That is the path to inner strength. Part 4. Amor Fati. Loving your fate, no matter what. If there is one phrase that captures the soul of Stoic philosophy in its rawest and most liberating form, it is amor fati, love of fate. More than just acceptance, more than simple endurance, this concept invites you to say yes to life in its entirety, not only to the victories, but also to the defeats, not only to health, but also to sickness, not only to joy, but to sorrow, loss, confusion, and struggle. Amor fati is the art of aligning your will so completely with reality that you learn to love whatever happens, not in spite of its hardship, but because of it. The Stoics did not merely endure, they embraced. They found beauty in the very moments most people run from. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, writes, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." That is the essence of amor fati. Every hardship, every inconvenience, every detour becomes fuel for the fire. You take the chaos, and you create clarity. You take the weight, and you become stronger. This perspective is not passive, it's powerful. It turns misfortune into material. It makes you unstoppable, not because the world stops hurting you, but because nothing it throws can break your spirit. This isn't about being naive, it's about being indomitable. Imagine you wake up to unexpected bad news, a layoff, a breakup, a cancelled opportunity. The natural instinct is to resist it, to wish it hadn't happened. But the Stoic pauses and says, this too is part of the path. Instead of asking, why me? They ask, how can I use this? This is not about ignoring pain. It's about transforming pain. Stoicism isn't cold detachment, it's active alchemy. You turn life's harshest elements into strength, like turning lead into gold. You don't need things to go your way. You make whatever way things go your way. Amor fati isn't blind optimism, it's strategic resilience. It means understanding that the universe is not obligated to make sense to you, that every setback might in time reveal itself as a setup, that adversity often becomes the exact thing that sculpts the version of you you're meant to become. Seneca believed that misfortune is training for the soul, that hardship doesn't diminish us. It introduces us to our hidden reserves of courage. Without storms, a sailor never learns to sail. Without resistance, no muscle is ever built. Without fate's trials, our character remains untested. This mindset has deep modern applications. In business, failure is often the tuition you pay for wisdom. No great entrepreneur or investor builds success without stumbling first. Amor Fati trains you to stop fearing those stumbles and to start seeing them as necessary data, as refinement tools. In fitness, plateaus, injuries, and setbacks are often where true mental growth begins. The strongest athletes are not the ones who never fall, but the ones who embrace the fall as part of the training. They don't only tolerate the grind, they learn to love it. That's what Amor Fati offers you. Emotional invincibility. Even in relationships and mental health, the concept is profound. When we grieve or suffer loss, Amor Fati is not a command to erase emotion. It is permission to feel deeply while still seeing the value in our suffering. Grief reveals love, sadness reveals meaning. Conflict reveals what must be healed. Stoicism doesn't say, "Don't feel." It says, "Feel fully, but don't flee." Lean into the discomfort, love the lesson within it. Learn to see life's dark brushstrokes as necessary for its full canvas. Because every challenge you face is sharpening you, even if you don't see it yet. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time. The twining strands of fate wove both of them together, you and this moment. In other words, nothing is random. The challenge you are facing right now is not a mistake. It's an invitation to grow, to adapt, to rise. Amor Fati is the radical discipline of saying yes to that invitation, even when it comes cloaked in disappointment or pain. It is the ultimate declaration of freedom, because when you can love everything that happens to you, nothing can control you. Let's go deeper. Think about your biggest regret. A mistake, a lost opportunity, a wrong turn. Now ask yourself, who would you be without it? Strip it from your past, and what disappears with it? The lesson, the strength, the resilience you had to build, the relationships it helped you form later on. Amor Fati doesn't mean you wish for tragedy, but it means you recognize the value it left behind. You stop wishing to rewrite history and start seeing your story, scars and all, as sacred. The Stoic does not mourn the unchosen path. They walk the one they're on with full presence and power. Amor Fati is not just for big moments, it is also for the mundane. The traffic jam, the annoying co-worker, the spilled coffee. Every inconvenience is an opportunity to practice presence, patience, and perspective. Every why me can become thank you for this chance. You are always being shaped, even when it feels pointless, even when it's hard to stay optimistic. You are never standing still. You are becoming. And when you learn to love your fate, you accelerate that becoming. You no longer resist reality. You work with it. That is where real peace begins. The Stoics understood that loving fate is the only sane way to live in a world we cannot control. You can fight reality all you want, but you'll never win. Or you can embrace it, learn from it, and let it refine you. The fire doesn't stop burning. but you stop fearing it. You stop being its victim and become its student. This is how greatness is forged, one hardship at a time, one conscious choice at a time, until the world no longer dictates your mood, your mindset, or your mission. That's the power of amor fati. To love fate is to say, I do not need the world to bend to me. I will bend with it and grow stronger in the process. I will not flinch when things fall apart. I will not cower when chaos arrives. I will meet every moment with the courage to say, this is mine. I accept it. I will use it. I will love it. And in doing so, I will become unbreakable. Part 5. The power of present moment awareness in Stoicism. We live in a world that constantly pulls our attention in 1,000 directions. Notifications, headlines, conversations, and worries about the future. Our minds are rarely still, and even less often fully present. The Stoics understood this long before the invention of smartphones or social media. To them, the present moment wasn't just important, it was everything. Seneca warned, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. That single sentence captures the essence of a deeply Stoic life, peace not found in controlling the future, but in mastering the present. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the world as Emperor of Rome, faced uncertainty daily. War, disease, betrayal, his life was far from calm. And yet in his private writings, he continually reminded himself to return to the present. Confine yourself to the present, he wrote. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These weren't spiritual musings, they were survival tactics. Marcus knew that by grounding himself in the moment, he could face the chaos with clarity, not panic. When we talk about the present moment today, it's easy to confuse it with relaxation or escapism. But for the Stoics, presence was not about passivity, it was about purpose. To be fully in the moment is to act with intent. It means choosing how to respond rather than reacting impulsively. The present moment is where all of your choices live. It's where your power resides, not in some hypothetical tomorrow or in reliving the mistakes of yesterday. Every moment offers a chance to practice virtue. That's what the Stoics trained for. In practical terms, this awareness can transform how we approach even the most routine parts of life. In the gym, presence means focusing on the contraction of the muscle, the rhythm of the breath, the form of each repetition. You're not comparing yourself to someone else, you're not rushing through to be done, you're engaged in the discipline of the now. In business, presence means listening closely during meetings, noticing details others overlook, making decisions from clarity rather than distraction. Every high performer knows this truth. Success lives in your ability to stay locked into the task at hand. Stoic presence is just as powerful when dealing with anxiety or emotional pain. Anxiety often lives in imagined futures. Depression clings to the weight of the past, but neither can fully exist in the now, when your attention is tethered to the real. When Epictetus said, "There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond our power," he wasn't asking us to numb ourselves. He was challenging us to reorient our minds toward what we can affect. That shift, however small, is what Stoics practice daily. And this practice is exactly that, a discipline. You will get distracted. you will worry. Your mind will drift. That's not failure, that's the point. The Stoic returns to the present over and over again. Like a muscle, this awareness grows with repetition. You notice the thought pulling you away, and you come back to your breath. You feel anger rising, and you pause to consider your response. You catch your impatience, and you replace it with patience. These are tiny victories. But over time, they change how you show up in your life. This isn't just theory, it's the foundation of emotional resilience. When something goes wrong, you can panic, or you can return to the moment. Ask yourself, what can I control right now? What virtue can I apply here? Sometimes the answer is courage. Other times, it's humility. Either way, presence gives you the platform to choose. Without it, you're at the mercy of every emotion, impulse or external trigger that enters your path. Seneca, in On the Shortness of Life, makes an even sharper point. He writes, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Most people spend their days chasing what they don't need, thinking about what they can't control, and ignoring the very time they inhabit. The present is not some vague idea, it's a real measurable window of time, and it's where your legacy is written. To begin cultivating Stoic presence, pick one habit. Maybe it's how you eat, or how you walk to class, or how you lift weights. Do it with full focus. Then notice when your mind wanders. Don't judge, just return. This is Stoic meditation, bringing your awareness back to the here and now. Not once, but 100 times a day. And with every return, you reclaim a little more of your power. Ultimately, presence is a form of freedom. It frees you from the regrets of the past, the fear of the future, and the chaos of the external world. It brings you into alignment with what really matters, your choices, your actions, your values. In a world full of noise, the Stoic carves out stillness. And in that stillness, they find strength, clarity, and the discipline to live a life that truly matters. Part 6. Temperance, the Stoic art of self-control in an age of excess, in an era of instant gratification, where one click brings food, entertainment, attention, and pleasure. The concept of temperance is more important and more forgotten than ever. To the Stoics, temperance wasn't about deprivation, it was about harmony. It was the discipline to say, enough, even when more is available. It was the restraint to remain steady when passions flare, the wisdom to moderate one's appetite for wealth, pleasure, power, or even emotional expression. In a world where consumption is encouraged and self-indulgence is often mistaken for self-care, Stoic temperance stands as a radical and liberating alternative. Temperance was one of the 4 cardinal virtues for the Stoics, alongside courage, justice, and wisdom. It was considered essential not just for self-mastery, but for living a good life. Seneca, for instance, often wrote about the dangers of excess. He warned that pleasures, left unchecked, become masters instead of servants. "We are more often frightened than hurt," he once wrote, "and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." A reminder that many of our cravings and fears are born from the stories we tell ourselves, not the needs of the moment. Temperance helps us separate true need from imagined hunger. Think about the gym. There, temperance shows up not only in how much you lift or how often you go, but in your ability to pace yourself, to recover, to not overtrain out of ego. It's the decision to rest when needed, to fuel your body properly, and to resist the urge to compare yourself to others. In business, temperance appears in your ability to delay gratification, investing now for long-term growth instead of chasing immediate results. It's choosing integrity over shortcuts, quality over quantity, and sustainability over short-term gain. In mental health, temperance is the restraint from reacting impulsively to anger, fear, or sadness. It's pausing, breathing, observing, then responding with intention. The Stoics didn't deny emotion, they disciplined it. They didn't reject pleasure, they measured it. For example, Epictetus taught that it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. This judgment is where temperance begins. You may feel the rise of anger, but do you fuel it, or do you master it? You may feel the desire for comfort, but do you indulge it without limit, or moderate it with purpose? This space between impulse and action is the training ground of Stoic virtue. The more you practice it, the more powerful you become, not over others, but over yourself. Temperance also teaches us to be content, not complacent, but content with what is enough. The Stoic doesn't strive for nothing, but they strive rightly. They don't envy the rich or crave the lavish. They recognize that true wealth is the freedom from want. Musonius Rufus, a Roman Stoic teacher, believed that luxury weakens the soul. He taught his students to eat simple meals, wear basic clothes, and endure discomfort, not because these things are moral in themselves, but because they build character. They teach you that you are not fragile. They remind you that your peace cannot be bought or broken by the shifting winds of pleasure. In today's world, this might look like choosing to walk when you could drive, fasting when you could feast, focusing when you could scroll. It's learning to sit with silence rather than seeking constant stimulation. It's choosing discipline over dopamine. And these aren't acts of punishment, they're acts of power. Every time you delay gratification, you strengthen your will. Every time you say no to what weakens you, you say yes to what strengthens you. This is how the Stoic builds unshakable discipline, not through harsh denial, but through purposeful moderation. One of the most misunderstood aspects of temperance is that it doesn't eliminate joy, it enhances it. When you consume less, you savor more. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. When you slow down, you become more present. The Stoic doesn't reject the beauty of life. They train themselves to appreciate it without being enslaved by it. The point is not to avoid pleasure, but to never be ruled by it. In doing so, they remain free, calm in success, steady in failure, and unwavering in purpose. There's a story told about Socrates walking through a bustling marketplace. After seeing all the goods for sale, he smiled and said, "How many things I can do without." This wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. It was the mindset of a man who had mastered his desires, not been mastered by them. This kind of self-control is not celebrated enough today, but it's the cornerstone of lasting fulfillment. Because if your happiness depends on more, then your happiness is fragile. But if it depends on virtue, on self-control, then nothing can take it away. Temperance, in the Stoic sense, is a quiet power. It doesn't scream, it doesn't flaunt, but it radiates. It's visible in the way a person carries themselves, the steadiness of their gaze, the calm of their voice, the integrity of their choices. It's what allows a person to remain grounded in a storm, to resist the temptations that would pull them off course. And most importantly, it's what makes freedom possible, not freedom to do anything, but freedom from being controlled by anything. If you want to rewire your mind, begin with temperance. Start by identifying one area of excess in your life, Maybe it's social media, junk food, complaining, gossip, or impulsive spending. Then apply moderation, not abstinence, but awareness. Track your choices. Measure your responses. Notice when the craving comes and choose a different action. With time you'll see you are not your urges. You are not your habits. You are the one who decides. And in that decision lies the Stoic path to discipline, freedom, and peace. Part 7. Amor fati, loving one's fate as a gateway to power. There is a Latin phrase that encapsulates one of the most powerful mindsets a human being can cultivate: amor fati, the love of fate. It is not merely acceptance of what happens to us, but the bold embrace of it. It is the idea that everything that occurs, whether joyous or painful, desirable or unwanted, is woven into the very fabric of our story for a reason. The Stoics believed that to live well, one must not only endure the uncontrollable, but cherish it because it is yours, because it is real, and because resisting it only leads to misery. Amor fati is not fatalism. It is strength. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reminded himself not to rail against reality. "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to," he wrote. "Rather, want them to happen as they do, and your life will go well." This is the essence of amor fati, not passively allowing life to run over you, but learning to see the meaning, the opportunity, even the beauty in every event. The obstacle becomes the path, the failure becomes the lesson, the heartbreak becomes the fire that refines the soul. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, if only you are willing to see it that way. This mindset is incredibly useful in modern life, especially when things don't go according to plan. In business, a failed launch, a rejected proposal, or a collapsing venture can be devastating. But the entrepreneur who practices amor fati sees it as market feedback, a pivot point, or even protection from a worse outcome. In the gym, an injury that takes you out of training may at first feel like a setback. But with amor fati, it becomes a signal to train smarter, learn mobility, or discover mental toughness. In relationships, rejection can seem personal, but through this lens, it becomes redirection toward growth, toward alignment, toward your highest potential. This isn't delusion. It's not pretending that suffering doesn't hurt or that injustice doesn't sting. Amor fati doesn't deny pain, it honors it. It simply asks, now that this is here, what will I do with it? You can cry out against the storm, or you can learn to sail in its winds. You can resist the present, or you can engage with it fully. Amor fati takes all that is and transmutes it into purpose. Friedrich Nietzsche, though not a Stoic, carried the torch of this idea with burning intensity. He wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it." This is the difference between survival and transcendence. The Stoic doesn't just survive difficulty, they alchemize it into power. One of the most potent modern examples of amor fati is found in adversity faced by athletes. Consider an Olympian who trains for years only to suffer an injury before competition. The untrained mind sees only despair, but the Stoic trained mind says, this too is part of the journey. And in some cases that athlete goes on to become a coach, a speaker, or a founder of a program that helps others heal. The fate they did not want becomes the very thing that makes them unforgettable. The same is true for someone who is fired and goes on to launch their own company, or someone who loses a relationship only to discover a depth of self they never knew existed. The loss is real, but it is not the end. It is the forge. The practice of amor fati transforms your internal world, When you stop wishing for a different life, you start mastering the one you have. You stop comparing your journey to someone else's and start mining your own for treasure. You stop seeing the past as a burden and start treating it as a teacher. This doesn't mean you don't take action or pursue change. On the contrary, it gives you the strength to act wisely, without resentment, without distraction, with your whole self in the moment. Amor fati roots you in reality, and from there, you can build anything. To cultivate this, start with your story. Think of a hardship you faced, something that at the time seemed senseless or painful. Ask yourself, what did it make possible? What strength did it forge? What lessons did it teach? Then go further. What if this wasn't a detour, but the necessary path? What if it wasn't a mistake, but a message? The more you reflect this way, the more you'll find meaning in the places you used to find only regret. This practice is particularly useful when dealing with anxiety. Often we fear the future because we want it to be under control. Amor fati asks us to release that illusion, not by giving up, but by preparing fully while detaching from outcomes. It is the mindset of someone who trains, plans, learns and builds, but who also says, if it comes, good. If not, also good. Because I will meet whatever comes with full presence. That is not weakness, it is supreme confidence. In the digital age, where comparison runs rampant and the curated lives of others are constantly broadcasted, amor fati is a shield. It keeps your eyes on your own path. It reminds you that your circumstances, your struggles, your background, your timing are not liabilities. They are your terrain, your arena, your proving ground. You don't need someone else's life. You need to master your own. Ultimately, to love your fate is to love yourself, not the version that is perfect or polished, but the real, evolving, tested version. The one who keeps going. The one who learns. The one who builds something sacred out of shattered plans. That is Stoicism at its most beautiful, not an escape from pain, but a framework that turns every part of life, even the darkest corners, into fuel for the flame of your becoming. Part 8. The Stoic practice of self-awareness. Know thyself. Rule thyself. At the heart of Stoic discipline lies one of the most demanding and powerful practices known to humanity, self-awareness. The ancient Stoics held that the ability to look inward, to examine one's thoughts, emotions, and actions without distortion or self-deception was the beginning of all wisdom. To the Stoic, knowing oneself was not a luxury or an abstract philosophical endeavor. It was a daily, necessary act of self-governance. Without it, one could not hope to master desires, endure pain, or live in accordance with reason. Self-awareness in Stoicism is both radical and practical. It requires us to constantly observe what we are thinking, why we are reacting a certain way, what we are pursuing, and whether we are acting from virtue or from vice. This introspective posture was championed most famously by Marcus Aurelius, who filled his meditations with reminders to examine his intentions, temper his judgments, and remain vigilant against self-delusion. Every morning and evening, he would write down thoughts, reflections, and corrections to his own behavior, not as a performance for others, but as a mirror for his own soul. Seneca, too, in his letters to Lucilius, encouraged daily review of one's conduct. He urged his student to ask himself, what did I do well today? What did I fail to do? What passions ruled me? What habits began to form? These weren't meant to be exercises in guilt, but acts of alignment, bringing oneself back into harmony with reason, integrity, and moral clarity. Just as an archer must constantly adjust his aim, the Stoic must constantly recalibrate his character. Self-awareness, then, is a form of moral hygiene. It keeps the soul clean. In our modern world, where distractions are infinite and reflection is rare, this practice becomes even more valuable. Most people live reactively, ruled by emotional impulses, external pressures, and unconscious patterns. Social media algorithms hijack attention. Consumer culture breeds constant craving. Many chase goals without knowing why they want them, or sabotage relationships without realizing how their unresolved wounds play out. Without self-awareness, we are not free. We are puppets of habit and environment. But imagine a different way of living. Imagine waking up and immediately checking in with your state of mind. Are you anxious? Why? Are you thinking clearly? Are you carrying yesterday's resentment into today's conversations? With awareness, you pause before reacting. You catch the anger rising, and you ask, is this anger justified? Will this help or harm? You sit with your craving before you act on it, and ask, will this bring me closer to the life I want? Will I be proud of this choice later? This is the beginning of sovereignty over the self. The Stoics believed that no enemy was more dangerous than the one within. It is not the tyrant, the storm, or the setback that undoes us. It is the unchecked emotion, the false belief, the desire that goes unchallenged. Epictetus taught that our judgments, not the events themselves, disturb us. He advised that we examine every impression, every urge, with the scrutiny of a guard at the gate. Before we accept a thought, we must ask, is this true? Is this useful? Is this aligned with my values? Only by doing so do we reclaim our agency. This practice is essential in domains like business. A leader who lacks self-awareness will blame employees for his own poor communication, overextend the company due to ego, or avoid hard conversations out of fear. A leader who is self-aware will pause, reflect, adapt, and take full responsibility for his decisions. In the gym, the unaware trainee may train recklessly out of insecurity, chasing aesthetics while ignoring recovery and sustainability. The self-aware trainee listens to his body, adjusts his mindset, and focuses on long-term discipline over short-term gratification. In mental health, self-awareness is the bridge between suffering and healing. A person lost in anxiety may ruminate endlessly without recognizing the core fear underneath. A person trapped in depression may believe every self-critical thought without questioning its origin. But with awareness comes the ability to step back and say, this is a thought, not a truth. This alone can open a door to transformation. Awareness creates distance between stimulus and response, and in that space, you reclaim your power. To cultivate Stoic self-awareness, begin with reflection. At the end of the day, write. Ask yourself what you did well and where you failed. Not with judgment, but with honesty. In the morning, set intentions. What virtues will guide your day? Temperance, courage, patience. In moments of stress, pause and breathe. Identify the emotion. Name the judgment behind it. Challenge it. Replace it with a better thought. This doesn't make you robotic. It makes you free. You are no longer owned by your reactions. You are the architect of your character. Another key tool is the practice of solitude. In silence and solitude, we come face to face with our inner world. Most people avoid it because it reveals things they'd rather not confront. But the Stoic embraces solitude, not to escape the world, but to see oneself clearly. Take time each day to sit in quiet. Observe your mind without distraction. See the patterns. Notice where you resist. This is not wasted time. This is the gym for your soul. True self-awareness also requires humility. You must be willing to admit when you are wrong, to acknowledge that your perceptions are flawed, and to remain a student of your own nature. The Stoics, despite being emperors and teachers, never stopped learning. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of his flaws. Epictetus said it was better to admit ignorance than to cling to false certainty. Self-awareness isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about being honest with where you are and committed to where you want to go. In the end, self-awareness is the beginning of all Stoic practice. Without it, you cannot apply reason, cultivate virtue, or live according to nature. With it, everything becomes possible. You become your own compass. You stop drifting, you stop being pulled by the tides of impulse, and instead steer toward a life of clarity, strength, and wisdom. Know thyself, rule thyself, and in doing so, you will find the freedom the Stoics spoke of, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from the chaos within. Part 9. Memento Mori. Using the awareness of death to transform life. Among the most powerful and haunting Stoic teachings is the principle of memento mori, a Latin phrase meaning, remember you will die. To the Stoic, death was not a taboo subject or something to be feared and pushed away. It was a teacher, a companion, a sharpening blade against which the soul could be honed. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he was a mortal man destined for the same end as all who came before him. Seneca wrote extensively on death, not to depress his readers but to awaken them. And Epictetus taught that to live well, one must be prepared to die at any moment. Memento mori is not a gloomy thought exercise, it is a call to presence. When you truly internalize the reality of your death, not as some abstract concept, but as something certain, unknowable in its timing, and utterly irreversible, it changes how you see everything. You stop wasting time. You stop holding grudges. You speak what needs to be spoken. You pursue what truly matters. You begin to live with a kind of intensity and sincerity that only the finite nature of life can inspire. Death is the reason life means anything at all. The Stoics believed that death gave structure to life. If we were immortal, what would urgency mean? Why strive to become better? Why care about this day more than the next? But because we know we are temporary, we are called to act. We are called to speak our truth, to love with our whole hearts, to write our book, to build our business, to lift that weight, to forgive that person, to show up for our loved ones, not tomorrow, not next year, but now. Death reminds us that we do not have time to waste. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He challenged us to reflect on how we spend our days. Are we consumed by trivial worries, chasing status, obsessing over opinions, or numbing ourselves with distractions? If death stood beside us, would we spend our time differently? Would we delay the hard conversations? Would we waste hours on social media? Would we hold back on our dreams, paralyzed by fear or self-doubt? Probably not. The presence of death clarifies what matters most. In a world that constantly distracts us from mortality, the Stoics tell us to look directly at it. Not to obsess, but to integrate. The modern world avoids death at all costs. We dress it up, sterilize it, or pretend it doesn't exist. But this denial weakens us. It makes us anxious and reactive. It dulls our sense of urgency and blinds us to the preciousness of now. The Stoic, by contrast, keeps death close. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't being dramatic. He was reminding himself to live deliberately. This perspective is profoundly transformative for modern life. In business, memento mori teaches us to stop postponing risks. You don't have forever to start that company, pitch that idea, or write that book. Time is your most valuable asset. Each day you delay is one less day to create. In relationships, it urges us to reconcile faster. Why let pride or resentment linger when death could come to either party without warning? Say what needs to be said. Give love freely. And in personal development, it shatters procrastination. Stop saying someday. Begin today. One of the most powerful ways to practice memento mori is through visualization. Imagine, for just a moment, that this day was your last. Would you behave differently? Would you treat people with more kindness? Would you waste time complaining? Would you take that walk in the sun, call your mother, hug your partner a little tighter? Visualizing the end, far from making us gloomy, reorients us. It puts our problems in perspective. Most of what we stress over, traffic, emails, minor disagreements, falls away in the face of death. What remains is what truly matters. This mindset can be especially healing in mental health. For someone struggling with anxiety, the practice of memento mori can help reframe fears. If we are all going to die, does that meeting really matter as much as we think? If life is short, why give power to a thought that doesn't serve us? For those facing depression, the Stoic view of death offers something counterintuitive: hope. If this suffering is part of a fleeting life, it will pass. If death is certain, then life must be honored. Every day alive is a day with potential. Every breath is a gift. This practice is not only for quiet reflection, it's meant to be a guide in action. Live as if you were dying. Use the finiteness of life to infuse meaning into every hour. Embrace discomfort knowing that comfort is fleeting. Take bold action, knowing you have nothing to lose in the grand scheme. Fear of embarrassment, judgment, or failure vanishes when you compare it to the certainty of death. And this gives you immense power. You become unstoppable. Not because you are fearless, but because you understand what truly deserves your fear. Not death, but a life half-lived. Memento mori is ultimately a call to gratitude. You are alive today. You are breathing, moving, thinking. You can read, learn, build, love, and become. That is miraculous. Billions have come before you and are now gone. Many had dreams they never realized. You are still here. What will you do with that gift? Will you waste it worrying about things that don't matter? Or will you rise to the moment, carve meaning from chaos, and leave behind a legacy of courage, truth, and love? The Stoics remind us that death is not the enemy. It is the most honest teacher we will ever have. It does not lie. It does not delay. It strips away the superficial and reveals the essential. And if we learn to live with death at our shoulder, we become more alive than ever. We don't cower in fear, we expand in presence. We love more fiercely, act more boldly, and let go more gracefully. In remembering that we will die, we learn how to truly live. Part 10. The Power of Self-Discipline. Freedom through restraint to the Stoics. The concept of freedom had little to do with external conditions or political systems. True freedom was not about being able to do whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. It was about being free from the tyranny of your own impulses. In a world ruled by temptation, distraction, and emotional overreaction, the Stoic path to mastery lies in self-discipline. The one who can command himself is freer than any king. This idea lies at the heart of Stoicism. Self-rule is the highest form of sovereignty. For the Stoic, freedom meant power over the self. It meant not being a slave to lust, anger, gluttony, greed, or laziness. Epictetus was born into slavery, yet he spoke like a man freer than any emperor because he had achieved inner discipline. No man is free, he said, who is not master of himself. The modern world confuses pleasure for freedom, but the Stoics knew better. Indulgence can become a prison. Unchecked desires chain you to things outside your control. But discipline, deliberate, reasoned control over your actions, grants you independence. In a gym setting, we see this truth play out daily. The person who trains regularly, eats mindfully, and follows a recovery plan exercises freedom through structure. They are not restricted, they are choosing excellence over comfort. The lazy path feels free in the moment, but leads to weakness, pain, and regret. The disciplined path seems difficult, but it leads to strength, health, and confidence. This is the paradox of Stoic freedom. It comes not from surrendering to impulse, but from mastering it. Seneca noted that while most people were preoccupied with what they could buy, gain, or achieve, the Stoic was concerned with who they were becoming. Self-discipline was not a tool for impressing others. It was the furnace in which character was forged. Without discipline, character erodes. The person who avoids discomfort avoids growth. The one who always gives in to cravings remains mentally weak. Stoic discipline means enduring what must be endured and rejecting what ought to be rejected, not because it's easy, but because it is right. In business, this philosophy becomes a superpower. Success in entrepreneurship is not about brilliant moments of inspiration. It's about consistent effort over time. It's saying no to temporary pleasures in pursuit of long-term gain. It's doing the boring, unglamorous work when no one is watching. Stoic discipline helps you resist the urge to chase every shiny object. It grounds you in principle. It helps you keep showing up, refining your skills, and executing with precision even when motivation fades. Self-discipline also shapes how we manage our emotions. In a world where outrage spreads like wildfire and instant gratification is one click away, it is discipline that makes us pause, reflect, and respond with clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly about self-control, not because he had mastered it, but because he was practicing it every day. You have power over your mind, he reminded himself, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was emperor of Rome, yet he still wrestled with anger, pride, fatigue, and lust. The battle is never over, and that's why discipline must be a lifestyle, not a phase. In our mental health, self-discipline is often the key to recovery. It's not about becoming robotic or suppressing emotions. It's about developing rituals that sustain us through difficult times. Making your bed, exercising, journaling, meditating, showing up for therapy. These are acts of rebellion against chaos. They are small affirmations of control. When life spirals, discipline brings stability. When our minds are cloudy, discipline creates clarity. The Stoics knew that the one who could stick to a path during adversity was already victorious. Modern Stoicism requires embracing this discomfort as a tool for transformation. Instead of avoiding hardship, we lean into it with purpose. Want to train your discipline? Take cold showers. Wake up early. Fast for a day. Commit to a reading schedule. Track your finances. Resist the urge to gossip. Hold your tongue when angry. Each small act of restraint strengthens your will like a muscle. Each act of discipline brings you closer to your potential. And every time you choose your values over your impulses, you become a little more free. We must also recognize that self-discipline is not about perfection. The Stoics understood that failure was inevitable. What mattered was how we responded. If you slip, you start again. If you lose your temper, you make amends. If you skip a workout, you get back to the gym. What defines a disciplined person is not that they never fall, it's that they never stay down. They refuse to let temporary weakness become permanent identity. Seneca wrote, If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. This principle should also be applied to how we use our time. Time, the Stoics taught, is the most precious resource we have. Every wasted minute is a theft from our future. Discipline with time means scheduling priorities rather than prioritizing your schedule. It means blocking distractions, saying no to commitments that don't align with your values, and being fully present in the task at hand. The disciplined person treats time like gold because they understand it is the currency of life. Ultimately, Stoic self-discipline is about alignment. It's aligning your actions with your higher nature. It's closing the gap between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. Discipline is not a punishment, it is a practice of love. Love for your potential, love for your future, love for what you could contribute if you were not ruled by fear, addiction, laziness, or ego. To the Stoic, discipline is not cold or rigid, it is the foundation of a life of meaning. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you were 10% more disciplined? How much stronger, healthier, more focused, and more fulfilled would you be if you simply did what you know you should do, more often, and with more consistency? That version of you is not a fantasy. It's the product of 1,000 small acts of discipline, repeated until they become who you are. The Stoics handed us the blueprint. All we must do is follow it with courage and persistence. Part 11. Emotional resilience. How the Stoics mastered the storm within. To live is to feel, and yet the Stoics knew that unchecked emotion was the destroyer of peace. They did not teach emotional suppression, as some critics wrongly assume, but rather emotional clarity. To be Stoic is not to be unfeeling, it is to feel deeply and remain unshaken. The Stoic does not fear sadness, anger, or grief. They fear being ruled by those emotions. They train their inner fortress, not to eliminate pain, but to endure it with dignity. Stoicism offers a powerful philosophy of emotional resilience, one that remains strikingly relevant in an age dominated by anxiety, burnout, and emotional volatility. When we read the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, we see a man confronting hardship after hardship, wars, betrayal, disease, loss, yet continually returning to inner stillness. He reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This was not denial. It was mastery. Marcus wasn't pretending suffering didn't exist. He was choosing how to meet it. To the Stoics, emotional maturity is not about feeling less, but about responding better. We live in a world that often amplifies emotion, rewarding overreaction and impulsivity. News headlines provoke outrage. Social media thrives on comparison and insecurity. Many of us are emotionally exhausted, not from what happens to us, but from how we interpret and ruminate over it. The Stoics would advise us to pause and insert reason between stimulus and response. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In that space between trigger and action lies our freedom. Emotional resilience begins in that space. The modern science of emotional regulation has caught up to what the Stoics knew millennia ago. Thoughts shape emotions. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most evidence-based approaches to mental health, is rooted in Stoic principles. The idea that we must examine our thoughts, question their accuracy, and replace unhelpful ones with wiser interpretations mirrors Epictetus' teachings. When you catch yourself spiraling into fear or anger, the Stoic response is to step back and ask, what story am I telling myself? And is it true? In doing so, we regain control. Consider anger. Seneca wrote an entire treatise on it, describing it as a temporary madness. No plague has cost the human race more, he said. To the Stoics, anger is never justified if it causes you to lose control. The strong person is not the one who lashes out, but the one who maintains composure. This isn't weakness, it's power. It takes immense inner strength to stay calm when provoked, to act with justice when wronged, to speak with clarity rather than shouting with emotion. The Stoic seeks not revenge, but resolution. In today's context, this emotional resilience is a superpower. Imagine facing workplace conflict, not with panic or gossip, but with calm and assertiveness. Imagine experiencing rejection or failure, not as a blow to your worth, but as a challenge to grow. The Stoics teach us to remain stable through life's ups and downs. You do not need to flatten your emotions, but you must become a wise steward of them. You must let reason drive and let emotion ride in the passenger seat, acknowledged, respected, but not in control. Mental health today demands this kind of mastery. Many people feel they are at the mercy of anxiety or depression. And while these conditions are real and complex, Stoic practices can become one pillar in our toolkit. Journaling to clarify thoughts, breathing deeply in stressful moments, practicing negative visualization to prepare the mind, accepting that some suffering is part of life and not a personal failure. These tools do not replace professional help, but they offer a daily discipline of emotional management, one that builds strength over time. The Stoics also prepared for pain through the exercise of premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. They imagined worst-case scenarios not to dwell in pessimism, but to rehearse resilience. Marcus Aurelius would wake and remind himself, "Today I may meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." By expecting difficulty, he was never caught off guard. This is not cynicism, it's preparation. It strengthens the mind to remain upright when others would collapse. It creates a mindset of emotional readiness that cushions the impact of life's blows. Importantly, Stoicism does not deny grief, heartbreak, or sorrow. It does not suggest that we walk through tragedy with a blank stare. Rather, it asks us to feel with awareness and to mourn without collapse. Seneca, who lost his son, wrote movingly about sorrow. He did not say, "Do not grieve," but rather, "Do not be conquered by grief." To lose and to cry is human, but to wallow endlessly is to lose yourself. Stoicism offers you the ladder out of the pit if you choose to climb it. The Stoic approach also teaches us to be less reactive. In a fast-paced digital world where everyone seems to have an opinion and offense is easily taken, resilience means learning to let go. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every insult deserves your energy. Someone has done you wrong. The harm is theirs, said Marcus. The harm only becomes yours if you accept it. Emotional resilience means picking your battles, staying grounded in your principles, and reserving your energy for what truly matters. In practice, emotional resilience is built like a muscle, through small, repeated efforts. Pause before reacting. Ask yourself what the Stoics would do. Journal your thoughts instead of posting them impulsively. Reframe your setbacks as opportunities. Sit with discomfort rather than running from it. Meditate on your mortality to appreciate the moment. These are not abstract ideas, they are daily disciplines, and they build the unshakable character the Stoics admired. So ask yourself, are you ruled by your emotions, or do you rule over them? Do you let anger dictate your words? Does fear steer your decisions? Does sadness paralyze you, or does it deepen your gratitude? The Stoic doesn't numb themselves, they sharpen themselves. They turn storms into strength. They do not wait to feel better. They act in ways that generate clarity. They do not expect life to be easy. They train for the hard. To rewire your mind with Stoicism is to develop the kind of emotional resilience that cannot be bought, faked, or taken away. It is the quiet strength that steadies you when everything else shakes. And it is available to anyone through daily reflection, deliberate practice, and the unwavering commitment to becoming a master of the self. Part 12. The Art of Voluntary Discomfort. Training the soul through hardship. To live well, the Stoics believed we must first learn how to suffer well. While modern society encourages comfort at every turn, softer beds, faster food, instant gratification, the Stoics trained their souls in the opposite direction. They sought out voluntary discomfort not because they were masochists, but because they understood a timeless truth. If you train in hardship, you will not be broken by it when it arrives. Voluntary discomfort is not self-punishment, it is soul strengthening. And it may be one of the most misunderstood yet powerful practices of Stoic philosophy. Musonius Rufus, the teacher of Epictetus, once said, "If one has practiced living simply and enduring hardship, one will be equipped to handle any difficulty." This principle is echoed in modern training environments, whether in the gym, the military, or entrepreneurship. We know that real growth happens outside the comfort zone, that your muscles don't grow in ease, they grow in strain. The Stoics simply applied this same principle to the mind, to the soul, to life itself. Their discomfort was not reckless suffering, but deliberate exposure to adversity for the purpose of strengthening their spirit. Voluntary discomfort takes many forms, and the Stoics practiced it in ways that sound eerily modern. They would fast, not for diet, but for discipline. Seneca described going without food, walking barefoot, or sleeping on the ground to remind himself of how little one truly needs to survive. "Set aside a certain number of days," he wrote, "during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" This powerful question tears the illusion off fear. Once you experience hardship and live through it, it loses its grip over you. In our world today, voluntary discomfort might look like taking cold showers, enduring intense workouts, refraining from indulgent foods, waking early, walking instead of driving, or simply denying yourself that constant drip of dopamine from entertainment and scrolling. These are not trends, they are tests. Each act of voluntary discomfort sends a message to your mind: I am in control, I do not need comfort to survive. I can choose challenge, and I will endure. This reprograms your mind not to seek comfort, but to become comfortable with discomfort, a shift that changes how you face every part of life. Modern neuroscience supports this practice. Exposure therapy, a method used to treat anxiety and PTSD, involves gradually exposing patients to the very things they fear until the fear loses its power. The Stoics knew this intuitively. When we step into hardship willingly, we take control of the narrative. We are no longer passive victims of life's randomness, we are active participants, forging strength. Like training with weights, the resistance is the point, and it is that resistance that makes you more than you were before. Voluntary discomfort also strips away false dependencies. Seneca warned that comfort can make us weak, dependent on things we do not need, and afraid of losing what we think we cannot live without. When you fast, you learn that you don't need constant snacks. When you sleep on the floor, you learn you can rest without luxury. When you walk instead of drive, you remember that your body was made for movement. You return to the basics and find a kind of freedom there. You realize how few of your comforts are necessary and how many are chains. In business, This principle translates to risk-taking and innovation. Entrepreneurs often face periods of instability, lean budgets, and sleepless nights. Those who have trained their minds in voluntary hardship are better prepared to handle uncertainty. They are not shattered by failure. They do not need everything to go perfectly. They have practiced discomfort and know how to operate under pressure. This mental edge can separate those who persevere from those who retreat. Building a business, like building character, requires embracing pain as part of the path. In fitness, we see this same stoic resolve in those who show up day after day, pushing past the burn, embracing soreness, and seeing discomfort not as an enemy, but as a guide. The gym becomes a stoic dojo. You choose the weight. You choose the weight. You choose the resistance. You suffer willingly, daily. And through that suffering, you grow. The same is true for cold plunges, long runs, martial arts, or any discipline that demands consistency over comfort. It is the voluntary nature of it that empowers you. You're not just enduring, you're choosing. But perhaps the most powerful application of voluntary discomfort lies in the mental realm. Choosing silence in an argument instead of exploding. Choosing patience in traffic instead of rage. Choosing forgiveness when bitterness feels more justified. Choosing to show up when everything in you wants to quit. These are discomforts of the soul, and they require deeper strength. Stoicism teaches us to lean into them, not away from them. And the more we do, the less frightening life becomes, because we have tasted struggle on our own terms. The philosopher Cleanthes, a student of Zeno, compared the soul to a wrestler. Just as the body must grapple to gain strength, the soul must face adversity. If you avoid every pain, every fear, every difficulty, you become spiritually flabby. But if you meet challenge with resolve, you develop an inner force that cannot be faked. This is why the Stoics sometimes welcomed hardship, not because they liked suffering, but because they saw in it the materials of greatness. So how do we practice voluntary discomfort today in a meaningful, sustainable way? Start small. Skip a meal once a week and notice your thoughts. Take cold showers for 7 days and watch your mind resist. Sleep without a pillow. Go a day without your phone. Walk when it's raining. Wake up before sunrise. Speak truthfully when it's uncomfortable. These are not punishments. They are reminders that you are capable, that you are resilient, that you can do more than you think. Each small act builds evidence for a stronger self. The real aim of voluntary discomfort is freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of craving. Freedom from the fear of what if. Freedom from the illusion that we need more to be whole. It teaches us to stand firm when life pushes hard. To walk into the storm not with panic, but with practiced poise. It reminds us that suffering is inevitable, but our reaction is optional. And when we choose discomfort on our own terms, we build a self that cannot be broken when life chooses it for us. The Stoics remind us that comfort is not the goal. Courage is. That resilience is not built in times of ease, but forged in friction. So ask yourself, when was the last time you did something hard on purpose? When was the last time you said no to comfort, not out of guilt, but out of strength? Let this be the new standard. Choose discomfort. Train the soul. Become unshakable. Part 13. Cultivating Inner Fortress. Building mental resilience through Stoic reflection. When the world shakes, it's the foundation within us that determines whether we stand or fall. The Stoics believed that true strength isn't loud, flamboyant, or external. It's quiet, deliberate, and internal. It's not about what you can control out there, but what you master in here. And so they built what we might call an inner fortress, a place of mental resilience fortified by discipline, perspective, and philosophy. Today, when anxiety and chaos dominate the cultural atmosphere, this Stoic art of mental resilience is more necessary than ever. The cornerstone of this fortress is reflection. Stoics were constantly reviewing, analyzing, and questioning themselves, not to wallow in guilt, but to improve. At night they would ask, "What did I do well? Where did I fall short? How can I do better tomorrow?" Epictetus urged us to examine yourself, not once in a while, but daily. This habit makes our thoughts more ordered, our emotions more measured, and our decisions more intentional. Without reflection, we're just reacting, but with it we respond, and that difference is everything. One of the most powerful tools for reflection is journaling, which has become a modern resurgence of an ancient practice. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is essentially a Stoic journal, a collection of private thoughts that helped him clarify his duties, fears, and doubts. He never intended it to be published. It was a tool for realigning with his principles. When you journal in the same spirit, you engage in dialogue with yourself. You ask, what matters? What am I avoiding? What truth am I not living out today? This self-honesty is the bedrock of resilience. Resilience, for the Stoics, was never about becoming emotionless. It was about becoming emotionally wise. It meant feeling without being ruled. Fear, sadness, anger, all were natural, but none deserved to dominate. Seneca taught that suffering comes less from external events and more from our internal interpretation. He said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." To build resilience, then, we must first challenge the stories we tell ourselves. Is this really a catastrophe, or am I making it one? This mental toughness is also built by rehearsing adversity before it comes. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They imagined losing their wealth, their health, even their lives, not to create anxiety, but to strip those fears of their power. If you've rehearsed it in the mind, it hits softer in reality. If you've visualized hardship, you walk into it steadier. In the gym, we call this visualization. In sports, it's mental rehearsal. In Stoicism, it's spiritual preparation. All aim at the same thing, fortifying the mind. And this mental training isn't just for dramatic tragedies, it's for everyday challenges. The missed email, the rude comment, the unexpected bill. Every reaction is a chance to practice Stoic clarity. Instead of spiraling, we pause. Instead of blaming, we question. Instead of complaining, we take responsibility. This internal shift doesn't just improve our day, it builds an internal architecture that makes us less reactive, less fragile, and more at peace, even when chaos knocks. Let's apply this to modern mental health. Anxiety often stems from the illusion of control, thinking we can or should dictate the outcome of things we cannot influence. The Stoics ask us to divide the world into two domains: what is up to us and what is not. Our thoughts, our actions, our values, these are ours. The weather, the market, other people's opinions, these are not. When we focus only on what's ours, we find peace. When we try to control the uncontrollable, we suffer. It's not detachment, it's alignment with reality. This aligns well with the modern concept of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which encourages people to change their thought patterns to improve their emotional health. In fact, many CBT techniques are directly inspired by Stoic ideas. One such practice is disputing irrational beliefs, something Epictetus taught 2,000 years ago. He said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. And if our judgments can be challenged, they can be changed." This means resilience is not genetic, it's a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice. Now consider this in the context of business. An entrepreneur's world is filled with uncertainty. One bad week could tank sales. A single investor could pull out. A trusted partner could walk away. But the resilient founder doesn't crumble. They pivot. They adapt, not because the world is soft, but because they are hard inside. They've trained their mind not to expect comfort, but to expect change. And when setbacks come, they don't internalize failure. They learn. This mindset is Stoicism in action. In your personal life, building this kind of inner fortress means having a sanctuary in your mind that chaos can't penetrate. It's the ability to sit still when the world moves too fast, to respond with grace when someone lashes out, to say no without guilt, to endure boredom, rejection, or frustration without losing your center. The Stoic isn't unfeeling, they're composed. They have weathered enough storms inside that the outside world loses its power to dictate their peace. Another crucial component of mental resilience is perspective shifting. When something painful happens, the Stoics would ask, what else could this mean? Instead of saying, this is a disaster, they'd ask, what is this teaching me? Instead of, why me? They'd ask, what can I do with this? This isn't toxic positivity, it's philosophical alchemy. It's taking the raw material of suffering and turning it into strength. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, embodied this Stoic principle. He wrote that we may not control our circumstances, but we can always choose our attitude. That choice is where our freedom lives. And if you fall short, and you will remember this, the Stoics didn't aim for perfection, they aimed for progress. They believed that each day is a training session, that every challenge is another weight lifted, another brick in the fortress. You are not weak for struggling, you are strong for continuing. You are resilient, not because nothing affects you, but because you choose what defines you. And in that choice lies your ultimate freedom. Part 14. Freedom through detachment. Letting go of what you don't control. At the heart of Stoicism lies a profound and counterintuitive truth. True freedom begins not by gaining more control, but by relinquishing it. This idea is summed up best in Epictetus' timeless declaration: some things are up to us and some are not. The simplicity of that line masks its transformative power. Once deeply understood, it becomes a key that unlocks clarity, peace, and resilience in a chaotic world. In today's culture, where control is glorified, controlling your image, your outcomes, your future, Stoicism cuts through with the wisdom of letting go. Freedom through detachment doesn't mean indifference, it means clarity. The Stoics were not encouraging a withdrawal from life or a cold detachment from the people and goals that matter. What they advocated for was a wise kind of engagement, one where your inner peace is not held hostage by external outcomes. To care deeply and yet remain unshaken by results, that was the Stoic ideal. It's the serenity of a mind that is anchored in its values, not tossed by the unpredictable tides of fortune, fame, or failure. Consider how much of our modern stress comes from trying to control what is ultimately outside our hands. We want people to behave a certain way. We want perfect weather for our plans. We want success to arrive on our timeline. But life, uncaring and free-flowing, rarely obeys our expectations. And so we suffer, not because life is cruel, but because we resist its nature. The Stoic response is to align with reality, to stop demanding that things be different and start living in accordance with how they are. This begins with a practice called the dichotomy of control. Every situation you encounter contains two elements: the part you can influence and the part you cannot. Your job is to focus all your effort, energy, and attention on the former and release the latter. If someone insults you, you can't control their words, but you can control your reaction. If a business deal falls through, You can't control the market, but you can control your perseverance. By surrendering what is not yours, you claim full ownership over what is. The modern world constantly bombards us with illusions of control. Social media tempts us to curate perfection. The self-help industry sells the myth of mastery over all aspects of life. But these promises often lead to anxiety, not freedom. The Stoics would ask you to unlearn this obsession. You do not need to control everything. You only need to control yourself, your thoughts, your choices, your principles. And paradoxically, the more you detach from external control, the more powerful you become internally. Take fitness as an example. You can't control how fast your body responds to training. You can't control every variable of sleep, metabolism, or energy on a given day. But you can control your consistency, your effort, and your attitude. The Stoic lifter trains not because results are guaranteed, but because effort itself is a form of freedom. You show up regardless of the outcome. You lift the weight regardless of the gain. And in doing so, you build something far stronger than muscles. You build character. In business, this mindset is just as crucial. An entrepreneur cannot control the economy, the competitors, or the timing of the market. But they can control the clarity of their vision, the integrity of their decisions, and the resilience of their response. Stoicism doesn't promise success in the world's eyes. It promises composure in the face of uncertainty. That composure, that unshakable core, is what allows leaders to endure failure, recalibrate, and press forward without being consumed by panic or pride. Detachment also applies to relationships. We often think that love means control, changing someone, fixing someone, owning their affection. But the Stoics understood that love, like life, is about acceptance. You cannot control whether someone stays, grows, or gives you what you want. But you can control how you show up. You can love with presence, respect, and truth. And if it ends, you grieve, you learn, and you let go, not out of coldness, but out of wisdom. True connection cannot grow where control is the soil. This form of detachment fosters a radical kind of presence. When you're no longer fixated on controlling the future, you are free to engage fully in the now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." That doesn't mean ignoring the future. It means refusing to live in fear of it. When you detach from imagined disasters or unmet expectations, you come home to reality. And in reality, most of the time, we are okay. We are breathing. We are able. And from that place, we make clear and courageous decisions. One of the most liberating exercises the Stoics used to reinforce this mindset was to reflect daily on what they were clinging to. What outcomes were they desperate to control? What fears were hijacking their peace? Journaling this out allowed them to see clearly. Much of their suffering was optional. Much of their stress came from attaching identity to what was never guaranteed. So they practiced release. They reminded themselves, I am not my success. I am not my possessions. I am not what others think. I am what I choose, today, in this moment. Modern mental health is catching up to this wisdom. Therapies rooted in acceptance and commitment, mindfulness, and cognitive reframing all echo this Stoic theme. Freedom comes not from changing everything, but from changing your relationship to it. When you stop fighting the storm and start accepting the wind, you can steer with clarity. You gain agency not through control, but through alignment. So as you move through your day, begin asking, what am I trying to control that I don't need to? Where am I wasting energy on outcomes I cannot guarantee? And most importantly, how can I return to what is mine? Your actions, your mindset, your discipline. These are the only parts of life that have ever truly belonged to you. And when you place your power there, you become untouchable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can own you. Part 15. Amor Fati. Loving your fate and embracing everything. The ancient Stoics believed there is no such thing as a purely good or bad event, only our perception of that event. What others may see as a catastrophe, the Stoic sees as an opportunity. What appears to be failure is simply another shape of fate. But they didn't stop at acceptance. The Stoics went further. They advocated for something radically bold, amor fati, the love of one's fate, not merely to tolerate what happens, but to embrace it, to see every twist of fortune, every hardship, every triumph as something necessary, purposeful, and even beautiful. Friedrich Nietzsche later made this concept famous when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it." This is the Stoic spirit in its most refined form. You don't just accept your path, you celebrate it, scars and all. You meet pain with a nod, you meet loss with grace, and you meet life on its terms, not yours. To love your fate is to stop resisting the uncontrollable. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, constantly reminded himself that nature governs all things, and what happens to him is neither good nor bad in itself. It's simply a part of the natural unfolding of the universe. The impediment to action advances action, he wrote. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not merely acceptance, it's transformation. The Stoic turns every obstacle into fuel. Every hardship becomes the soil from which greater character, resilience, and insight can grow. Amor fati is not about passive resignation. It is not throwing up your hands and saying, "Whatever happens, happens." It is an active, almost aggressive form of engagement with life. It says, "Yes, this happened, and I will meet it with everything I have. I will greet it, not just with acceptance, but with gratitude." When you live with amor fati, there is no wasted experience. Every challenge becomes a teacher. Every failure becomes a test. Every moment, even the painful ones, becomes a thread in the fabric of your personal greatness. Think about modern life. How often we are frustrated by detours, inconveniences, or plans falling apart. We say things like, "This wasn't supposed to happen," or "Why me?" Amor fati burns those questions away. It replaces complaint with curiosity. What is this here to teach me? How can this make me stronger? When you truly love your fate, you begin to see that nothing is out of place. Even the painful parts are brushstrokes in a much larger painting, one that you might not fully see now, but which time and perspective will eventually reveal. In the gym, for example, you might suffer an injury. The common reaction is anger, despair, impatience. But with amor fati, that injury is not the end. It's a different kind of training. Maybe now you focus on mobility, on breathwork, on mental discipline. Maybe you develop a new respect for the fragility of the body. Maybe this becomes the season that humbles your ego and deepens your resilience. Amor fati turns setbacks into springboards. In business, you might face failure, a deal that collapses, a launch that flops, a project that doesn't deliver. Amor fati challenges you to reframe it. What did this failure free you from? What did it force you to re-examine? What new insight can you carry forward? You're not the victim of circumstance, you are the student of it. The Stoic entrepreneur doesn't merely recover from failure. They alchemize it. They extract wisdom, courage, and clarity from the ashes of defeat. Mental health is another powerful domain where amor fati provides a lifeline. When anxiety hits, when depression looms, When life feels unbearable, what if we said, yes, this too is part of my story? That doesn't mean glorifying suffering. It means refusing to be defined by it. It means using the pain to know yourself more deeply, to reach out to others with empathy, to build habits and systems that sustain your strength. Amor Fati is the invitation to face the darkness without flinching and to carry forward with dignity, even when the weight is heavy. This approach to fate requires trust. Trust that the story is still unfolding. Trust that today's hardship may one day be the source of your greatest insight. And trust that the world, chaotic as it seems, still has room for meaning if you choose to create it. It is not easy to love your fate, but it is liberating. It removes the need for life to conform to your expectations. It removes the constant mental war against what is, and in doing so, it gives you peace, not a shallow peace, but one rooted in strength. One of the greatest gifts of Amor Fati is that it makes you unshakable. If you can love even the hard parts of life, then life can never truly break you. This mindset transforms fear into fortitude. If you can say, I welcome whatever comes, then nothing owns you, not loss, not failure, not the passage of time. This is the power of Stoicism, not to avoid pain, but to embrace all of life with a full and open heart. So how do you practice this in your daily life? Start with the small annoyances. A delay in traffic, a rude remark, a change in plans. Instead of irritation, smile and say, Amor Fati. Let it be a mantra. Let it be the way you breathe through disappointment. Then gradually, you build the capacity to apply this to larger hardships, betrayals, griefs, failures. And you'll find, over time, a surprising thing: your peace is no longer dependent on smoothness. It's rooted in your response. You no longer need life to be easy. You only need to meet it as it is. This is the Stoics' quiet superpower. The ability to love their path, even the paths they didn't choose. To not only endure what is necessary, but to affirm it. To not only survive, but to grow. Amor Fati is not about loving pain. It's about loving growth, loving truth, loving the unpredictable, awe-inspiring chaos of a life fully lived. Part 16. The Inner Citadel, Building an Unbreakable Core. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a metaphor that captures its essence: the inner citadel. This image was used by Marcus Aurelius, who imagined the mind as a fortress within, a place of stillness and strength that no external force could ever penetrate. The Stoics' true power comes not from their circumstances, their possessions, or even their physical body, but from this internal stronghold, the part of themselves that remains sovereign no matter what happens in the world around them. The inner citadel is where freedom lives. It is the domain of reason, character, and integrity. It is, in essence, the self untouchable, unshakable, and ultimately indestructible. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the battle cry of the inner citadel. Life may rage around you like a storm, but within your mind you can cultivate calm. Injustice, chaos, and misfortune may knock at your door, but they cannot breach your inner fortress unless you open the gates. The Stoic doesn't deny the existence of suffering. They prepare for it by fortifying themselves mentally and morally. They build walls of wisdom and gates of discipline. They keep watch through self-reflection and regular philosophical practice. And when the world tests them, as it inevitably will, they stand firm. In our modern lives, the inner citadel is more important than ever. We are constantly bombarded by information, expectations, and demands. The digital world tugs at our attention. Society pushes us toward shallow values. Our identity can feel fragile, constantly shaped by external validation. But the Stoic says, return to yourself, strengthen what is within. Build something that cannot be taken away. The inner citadel is the part of you that does not depend on likes, followers, or status. It is the steady voice in your head that says, I know who I am, even when the world is confused. In business, your inner citadel is your integrity. When others cut corners or chase short-term wins, the Stoic leader returns to their principles. They operate from clarity, not desperation. When the market turns or failure strikes, they don't crumble, they adapt. Their core remains intact. In the gym, your inner citadel is the reason you keep showing up, even when results are slow. It's the discipline to train when you're tired, the mindset that doesn't give up after a bad session. It's the mental armor that protects you from self-doubt. In mental health, the inner citadel is your sanctuary. When anxiety spikes or life feels unmanageable, you retreat not into denial, but into a deeper presence. You remember that your thoughts are not your enemy. They're a field to be navigated with reason and grace. To build your inner citadel, you must train like a warrior of the mind. Start with morning reflection. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? Visualize potential obstacles, not to fear them, but to prepare for them. This is called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Seneca taught this practice to help us become familiar with discomfort before it arrives, to rehearse our responses to adversity. Then, throughout the day, remain vigilant. Watch your impulses, question your assumptions, protect your time and attention as if defending sacred ground, because you are. At night, engage in evening reflection. Review the day without judgment. Where did you uphold your values? Where did you slip? What can you learn? This practice is not about guilt or shame. It's about growth. The inner citadel is not built in one day. It is forged through repetition, through honesty, and through commitment to your highest self. The more you reflect, the more you reinforce the architecture of your mind. Your inner walls grow stronger, and you become harder to shake. But the inner citadel is not a place of cold isolation. It's not about shutting out the world. It's about engaging with life from a place of grounded strength. The Stoic doesn't withdraw from humanity. They serve it. They walk into difficulty not because they enjoy suffering, but because they know who they are in the fire. They understand that the only true security is within, and that no matter how loud the noise gets outside, they can return to stillness inside. Think of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison and emerged without bitterness. He said, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." That is the inner citadel in action. It is the freedom of a man whose body was caged, but whose mind remained his own. Think of Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of a concentration camp and still wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." That is the Stoic spirit alive in modern history. You are not immune to the world, but you are not helpless either. You have something within you that no loss, no failure, no rejection can touch. Your clarity, your conscience, your courage. That is your inner citadel. Strengthen it with thought, reinforce it with action, defend it with discipline, and when the world turns cold, you will carry your warmth from within. Part 17. Amor Fati, the Stoic art of loving one's fate. There is a phrase in Stoicism that often confuses newcomers, but holds profound power once fully understood. Amor Fati, the love of fate. Unlike mere acceptance, which implies passive resignation, amor fati asks us to go further. It asks us to embrace everything that happens, good or bad, as something necessary, valuable, and even beautiful. To love your fate is to recognize that life, in all its chaos and unpredictability, is not something happening to you, but something happening for you. It is a call to align your soul with reality so deeply that nothing can uproot your peace. The Stoics believed that fate, or the natural unfolding of events, is beyond our control. What we do control is our attitude toward those events. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will, then your life will flow well." That is amor fati. It's not a naive optimism that denies pain, but a courageous mindset that transforms it. This idea echoes throughout Stoic thought, appearing in the writings of Marcus Aurelius, who told himself daily to welcome whatever nature brings, as if you had chosen it. In the modern world, amor fati is the ultimate mental shift. It is the antidote to victimhood, bitterness, and regret. Life does not ask for our approval before presenting its challenges. The loss of a job, a broken relationship, a missed opportunity, these events arrive without warning. But the Stoic doesn't dwell in anger or sorrow. They say, "This is my path now, let me walk it with strength." In the gym, this could mean embracing an injury, not as a setback, but as a chance to work on another aspect of your fitness, mobility, mindset, or patience. In business, it could be the collapse of a deal that opens a door to a better, more aligned opportunity. In mental health, amor fati invites you to treat your struggles not as signs of weakness, but as parts of your soul's evolution. This approach is radically empowering. Imagine going through life with a mind that doesn't flinch at difficulty, a heart that doesn't close when plans fall apart. Imagine meeting misfortune with the attitude, "I needed this." That is the Stoics' advantage, not because they're immune to pain, but because they've trained their perception to see meaning within it. Pain, to the Stoic, is a sculptor of character. Each trial is a chisel stroke, shaping the marble of your inner self. This perspective doesn't lessen the reality of suffering, it dignifies it. It gives suffering a purpose, a context, and ultimately, a role in your growth. How can we begin to practice amor fati? First, we must train our minds to meet life without resistance. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. On the contrary, it requires deep engagement and presence. Resistance is what breeds misery. Acceptance is what clears the path for response. When something happens that challenges you, instead of immediately labeling it bad, ask yourself, what can this teach me? How can I grow from this? This shifts your mindset from reaction to reflection, from frustration to formation. Second, journaling can be a powerful tool in developing amor fati. Each day, reflect on the events that didn't go your way. Write about them, but not from a place of complaint. Write to uncover the silver lining. What did this experience reveal about your expectations, your attachments, or your resilience? Over time, this practice trains your eyes to see opportunity even in the ashes. It rewires your nervous system to respond with curiosity instead of panic. Third, use the language of amor fati as your mental script. When things go wrong, say to yourself, "Good, this is part of the process. This is mine to face." It may feel unnatural at first, especially when pain is raw, but with repetition, this becomes your reflex. You begin to flow with life, rather than fight it. And this flow is what the Stoics describe as living in harmony with nature, accepting, adapting, and affirming. To love your fate does not mean you stop striving. Stoicism is not fatalism. You still set goals, pursue excellence, and take action. But when the outcome differs from your expectation, you don't collapse. You pivot. You adjust your sails to the wind rather than cursing the storm. This is how Stoics move through the world, firm in will, flexible in outcome. Historically, we see examples of amor fati in those who turned tragedy into triumph. Take Admiral James Stockdale, a Stoic practitioner who survived brutal imprisonment in Vietnam. He credited Epictetus for his mental resilience, stating that he had to accept the brutal facts of reality while maintaining belief in a higher purpose. He didn't just survive captivity, he grew from it. Or consider Thomas Edison, whose factory burned down. His response: "Thank God all our mistakes were burned up. Now we can start fresh." This isn't delusion, it's a form of spiritual alchemy, turning setbacks into strength. When you choose to love your fate, you don't become a prisoner of life's unpredictability. You become a co-author of your story. You stop asking "why me?" and start asking "what now?" You stop looking for escape and start looking for elevation. Every moment, no matter how small or painful, becomes raw material for your transformation. Amor fati is a practice. You won't get it perfect, and you're not supposed to. But the more you align your heart with life as it is, the more peace you'll find. Not the peace of avoidance, but the peace of alignment. You'll begin to see the divine order in what once felt like chaos. And in that awareness, you'll reclaim your power. Part 18. Memento mori. Remember you must die. The phrase memento mori, remember you must die, may sound grim at first, but to the Stoics, it was anything but morbid. It was a tool of liberation, clarity, and urgency. Death, for the Stoic, was not to be feared, but embraced as the most natural and necessary part of life. Rather than ignoring it or pretending it wouldn't happen, the Stoics insisted that we keep death close. In doing so, we wake up, we live more deeply, more authentically, and more courageously. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do, say, and think." This wasn't a threat, it was a compass. When we internalize memento mori, we cut through distractions and remember what actually matters. Think of how much time we waste on trivial anxieties, petty arguments, endless scrolling, and chasing validation. But when we reflect on the certainty of death, not in a depressive way, but in a sober, stoic way, those concerns fade. Suddenly, being right in a debate doesn't matter as much. The missed opportunity becomes a lesson, not a life sentence. The desire to live someone else's life diminishes, and what emerges is a fierce urgency to live your own. Memento mori reminds us that life is not only short, it's uncertain. Tomorrow is not promised. This awareness can fuel discipline, action, and deep appreciation. In the gym, memento mori reminds you that your body is a gift that will one day fail. So why not use it while you can? Why not test its limits and train it to be strong, capable, and resilient? In business, it pushes you to take bold moves. That project you've been delaying, that risk you've been hesitating to take, the reminder of your mortality strips away fear. What are you waiting for? A perfect moment. It may never come. All you have is now. In your mental health, memento mori can bring calm during anxiety and clarity in the fog. When life feels overwhelming, step back and ask, if this were my last day, would I give this fear my attention? Most often, the answer is no. Seneca, one of Stoicism's most eloquent voices, spent many of his letters urging people to prepare for death, not as an end, but as a mirror. He wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." For Seneca, death was not a foe to flee, but a filter that removed the inessential. He knew that people who fear death often live small, cautious, shallow lives. But those who acknowledge its presence are capable of incredible depth. They love harder, speak more honestly, and act more decisively. They live fully because they know they don't have forever. Imagine how your life would change if you carried this awareness throughout your day. Would you gossip less? Would you express love more? Would you stop worrying about what people think and start living in alignment with your values? Memento mori isn't about obsessing over death. It's about realigning with life. It's about learning to live on purpose, with urgency and sincerity. It reminds us that our time is finite and therefore priceless. Modern life, with its distractions and constant stimulation, tries to bury death. It hides it behind filters, hospitals, and euphemisms. But the Stoic sees through this illusion. The Stoic walks hand in hand with death, not out of fear, but out of respect. They know that death is not the opposite of life, but its final chapter, one that gives meaning to the pages before it. A life that is lived as if it will go on forever becomes sluggish and entitled. But a life lived under the banner of memento mori is vibrant, present, and profoundly intentional. There is a concept in productivity circles known as the rocking chair test. It asks, if you were in a rocking chair at the end of your life, looking back, would you be proud of how you spent your time? Would you wish you had taken more risks, loved more openly, or pursued that calling you ignored? Memento mori is the daily version of that test. It's a spiritual audit. It doesn't wait for the final moments to ask you how you lived. It asks you every day. It holds up a mirror and says, "You are mortal. Act accordingly." You don't need to fear death. You need to fear never truly living. That is the real tragedy. A life postponed, a voice never spoken, a potential never tapped. The Stoics saw death not as the destroyer of meaning, but as its architect. Because we will die, our actions matter. Our words carry weight. Our days are not disposable. When you live with memento mori etched into your soul, you live with both intensity and peace. You stop numbing yourself with distractions. You stop saying someday. You live here. You live now. The Stoics didn't ask us to worship death, but to see it as an ally. To use it as a reminder that every breath is a gift, every moment a chance to become who we were meant to be. Memento mori strips away the illusion of permanence. It wakes us from the sleep of comfort and jolts us into a life of clarity, courage, and purpose. It makes every sunset more vivid, every embrace more sacred, and every word more meaningful. So ask yourself, if this were your last year, how would you live? If today were your final chapter, would it read like the one you'd want to be remembered by? Not out of fear, but out of gratitude for the chance to choose, to act, to be. That is the power of memento mori. It doesn't diminish life. It intensifies it. It sharpens your focus, unlocks your courage, and frees you to live boldly, wisely, and without regret. Part 19. Amor fati, love your fate. Among the Stoic principles that challenge and elevate the human spirit, amor fati stands out as one of the most transformative. Translated from Latin, it means love of fate. Not merely accepting what happens, but embracing it, loving it. The Stoics didn't just teach us to tolerate the ups and downs of life. They taught us to see them as essential, as necessary, as beautiful. When Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way," He was speaking directly to the heart of amor fati. It's a mindset that says, yes, this is what life has given me, and I will make the most of it. To love your fate is to look at the hardest moments in your life, the failures, the losses, the heartbreaks, and say, this too was mine, and I will use it. It's a declaration of inner strength. When we resist life, we suffer. When we fight against the inevitable, we become bitter. But when we lean into reality, when we accept what comes as though we chose it ourselves, something profound happens. We become resilient. We become powerful. We stop being victims of circumstance and start becoming authors of meaning. Think about the gym, the soreness, the fatigue, the plateaus. They're not obstacles to be hated. They're parts of the process. You learn to love the burn because you know it's making you stronger. You embrace the difficulty because it's shaping you into someone more powerful. Amor fati brings that same mindset into every area of life. Your business struggles aren't curses, they're classrooms. The anxiety that forced you to seek help wasn't a defect, it was a doorway to growth. The rejection that hurt wasn't a wall, it was a redirection. Amor fati doesn't ask, why me? It asks, what can I do with this? In your career, amor fati helps you move forward without regret. If an opportunity slips through your fingers, love your fate. Perhaps it wasn't meant to be. Perhaps something better is waiting, or perhaps you'll become better because of it. In relationships, amor fati encourages you to embrace even the pain. The end of something doesn't mean it was pointless. On the contrary, it means it had a season, and in that season it taught you. Amor fati allows you to look back without bitterness and forward without fear. You become someone who sees meaning in every event, no matter how unexpected or painful. This idea doesn't mean we should want bad things to happen. Stoicism is not passive or masochistic. What amor fati teaches is that once something has happened, our only power is how we respond. Do we let it crush us, or do we rise with it? Do we dwell in the pain, or do we use it as fuel? When Seneca wrote about his exile from Rome, he didn't complain. He wrote that hardship introduced him to philosophy, and for that he was grateful. He couldn't change the circumstances, but he could change what they meant. That is the essence of amor fati, turning life's fire into your forge. Modern life is full of unpredictability. Plans fall through. People disappoint us. The world moves faster than we can keep up with. Amor fati is the anchor in that storm. It tells us not to waste time resenting reality, but to mold ourselves within it. When a flight gets delayed, amor fati says read, reflect, breathe. When a door closes, amor fati says build a window. It turns adversity into agency. It transforms obstacles into opportunities to develop character, patience, creativity, and grit. There is something deeply liberating about letting go of how things should have been. You stop playing the victim in a story you didn't write, and instead become the hero of the one you're living. Life owes us nothing, and yet it gives us everything we need to grow. Amor fati invites us to not only accept the unexpected, but to treasure it, to make art from it, to take what is and say, this is mine, and I will use it well. Practicing amor fati means reframing everything. The breakup that devastated you, it cleared space for self-discovery. The failure that embarrassed you, it taught you resilience and humility. The injury that halted your progress, it revealed your dependence on results instead of process. When you live with amor fati, nothing is wasted. Every part of your life becomes meaningful, because every part contributes to the whole. You no longer ask life to be easy. You ask for the strength to meet life exactly as it is. This principle isn't just useful during hard times, it also deepens our joy. When you love your fate, you don't take good moments for granted. You cherish them. You realize how fragile and fleeting they are. You stop chasing a fantasy future and start soaking in the beauty of now. Amor fati makes life richer, more vibrant, and infinitely more meaningful. You wake up each day and greet it with openness, not expectation. You no longer need life to go your way. You just need it to go, and wherever it goes you will follow, with courage, gratitude and presence. The Stoics were not cold, emotionless statues. They were human beings, tested by exile, war, poverty and loss. And still, they chose to affirm life. Still, they chose to write, to reflect, to teach. Their example calls us to do the same, to meet our fate, not with resistance, but with reverence, to look at the chaos, the beauty, the heartbreak and the joy, and say, yes, this is life, and I will love it. Part 20. Eudaimonia, the Stoic vision of the good life. At the summit of Stoic philosophy lies a word often misunderstood, yet central to everything the Stoics taught, eudaimonia. A Greek term often translated as happiness, it actually means something deeper, a state of flourishing, of living in harmony with one's true nature. It is not about fleeting pleasures or external success. It is about realizing your potential, aligning your life with virtue, and becoming the fullest version of who you are meant to be. For the Stoics, eudaimonia was not found in wealth, fame, or power. It was found in character, in wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. The four cardinal virtues they held above all else. To understand eudaimonia is to understand what the Stoics were really after. They were not trying to create emotionless people. They were trying to create free people. People who were not enslaved to fear, pleasure, pain, or desire. People who could walk through fire and remain whole. People who lived with integrity in a world that constantly pulled them away from themselves. Eudaimonia is the result of a life lived with intention, a life where every action is aligned with your highest principles. It is the calm of a clean conscience, the deep peace that comes from knowing you are living rightly, even if no one sees it, even if no one rewards it. Let's break this down into real terms. In your fitness journey, eudaimonia isn't six-pack abs or hitting a certain number on the scale. It's the self-discipline you develop, showing up every day. It's the self-respect that grows when you don't quit. It's the strength of character that comes from mastering your impulses. In business, eudaimonia isn't just financial success. It's building something with integrity. It's leading with fairness. It's making decisions not out of greed, but guided by your values. In relationships, eudaimonia isn't about being adored. It's about being honest, empathetic, and loving even when it's difficult. The Stoics taught that external success is indifferent, neither good nor bad. What matters is how you pursue it and how you react to it. If success makes you arrogant, it's not good. If failure makes you bitter, it's not bad. Everything is an opportunity to practice virtue, and virtue is the true source of fulfillment. This is where Stoicism becomes so empowering. It returns control to you. It says you may not choose your circumstances, but you always choose your response. And your response determines the quality of your life. In a world of chaos and distraction, eudaimonia is a quiet rebellion. It's a refusal to be defined by what happens to you, and a commitment to define yourself by how you live. Consider the modern epidemic of comparison. Social media constantly feeds us images of curated perfection, success, beauty, wealth. It's easy to feel like you're falling behind. But the Stoics would remind you that you are not in competition with anyone else. Your only task is to live your life well, not theirs, yours. Eudaimonia invites you to turn your gaze inward, to ask not, what do they have, but am I living with virtue? Not why am I not where they are, but am I becoming who I ought to be? It grounds you in the truth that your worth is not determined by metrics or applause. It is determined by the content of your character. This doesn't mean Stoicism asks you to give up goals or dreams. Far from it. It asks you to pursue them from a place of strength, to want success, not as a crutch for your insecurity, but as a stage on which to demonstrate virtue, to want wealth, not to impress others, but to serve others, to want love, not to fill a void, but to share from a place of fullness. Eudaimonia is the fusion of purpose and peace. It is living in pursuit of excellence, but never being a slave to results. It is being deeply engaged with the world, while remaining internally anchored. The Stoic path to eudaimonia is not easy. And that's the point. It requires constant reflection, discipline, humility, and resilience. It demands that you confront your ego, that you question your assumptions, that you train your mind like a warrior trains his body. But with that effort comes a reward far greater than pleasure. You gain clarity, you gain steadiness, you gain the power to live on your own terms. Imagine a life where no success could corrupt you and no failure could break you. A life where you were grounded in principle, not tossed by emotion. That is what eudaimonia offers. Think about the concept of legacy. So many people chase fame in hopes of being remembered. But the Stoics didn't concern themselves with how others would remember them. They focused on how they lived. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most powerful man in the world at the time, wrote not to impress others, but to remind himself to live with integrity. His meditations were never meant to be published. They were personal notes. A man trying to live well. That is the true Stoic spirit. Quiet excellence. Virtue for its own sake. A life of inward richness, regardless of outward recognition. Eudaimonia also means living with gratitude. The Stoics were deeply thankful for the present moment. They knew life was fleeting. Seneca often reflected on the shortness of life, not to scare himself but to wake himself up, to remind himself not to waste time on triviality. When you embrace eudaimonia, you begin to see every sunrise as a gift, every challenge as an opportunity, every encounter as a lesson. You become less reactive, more intentional, less anxious, more present. Your life may not be easier, but it will be richer. This is the invitation Stoicism offers, to rise above the noise, to resist the pull of petty concerns, to live with courage and clarity, to root your life in what is timeless and true. In the end, eudaimonia is not a destination, it is a direction, a way of walking through the world, with purpose, with virtue, with love for what is. You don't chase it, you embody it. Every moment, every choice, is a chance to step into the life you were meant to live.